Welcome to Music City Online. I am a host, producer Gary Earl. Tonight we are delighted. We've got a real treat for you. We have Amy Wolter from Tom Jackson Productions, On Stage Success. Now, I think everybody that's out there listening will agree. We all know that if you're going to learn to play an instrument, it takes years of practice, honing your craft. You want to learn how to write a hit song? You hone your craft, you learn how to do it the right way, et cetera, et cetera. But I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, oh, he's just naturally great on stage, or, he isn't very good on stage. Too bad, he'll never be good on stage. Having spent years performing in Vegas, Reno, and Tahoe, I know better than that. So, first question maybe for Amy is, are people born performers or?
Well, some people, typically we find some people are more natural on stage, just with what they're born with. But I think everyone can learn to be more engaging on stage and be a better performer. What we're all about is helping artists connect with the audience, because so often an artist will think, I'm going to get on stage, they're supposed to come because they like my music.
Right.
Yeah. But what they don't realize that the audience expectation is different for a show.
Mm-hmm.
They come for three reasons, basically. They come to be captured and engaged. Yep. They come to experience moments, and they come, in some cases, to be changed, to hear something that will click with something they need to hear, or something that might change their life a little bit. So with that in mind, of course they don't consciously know that, but we've just kind of found that to be true.
Mm-hmm. Anyone that's spent years on stage like myself knows that exactly true. And in fact, I didn't want to interrupt you here, but one of the things that you have down that I noticed, in what you work with really ties in with something that entertainers who spent many years on stage on a high level are very aware of, but most people aren't. There's the old question you had here of, if you plan your show out, doesn't that take the spontaneity out of it? I can't tell you how many nights after working in Vegas for years, people would come in and they sit, and we do this well-planned, well-crafted show that always looks like there's a magical moment taking place, and the audience would just be enthralled, feeling like they were there for that once-in-a-lifetime performance, not realizing that that's our job to make that moment every single night.
Right.
And that's exactly what you're talking about. They come for those moments.
Right. We first start with, what is the artist's vision? Where do you see yourself going? What do you want your show to become? What do you want people to get from it?
Right.
And we take who the artist is, and it's important to know this. We take who you are as an artist and your vibe and craft your show around that. In other words, we're not going to make you look cookie cutter if you're not like a Vegas type show, or if you're not a singer-songwriter, if you're a rock band and you want to do this, we stay true to who you are, so that you don't have to be afraid of turning out like, something you don't want, or something that's not authentically you. Yeah. So that's really important to us.
So if you're a singer-songwriter, you stay with natural things.
Yeah, it's a little more organic. If you're doing house concerts and stuff, we'll craft the show around that, because
and if you're a metal band,
2 feet away from people. Yeah.
Then the sky's the limit.
Right.
Whatever we can get away with. Okay.
Right.
Makes good sense.
Yeah. So that's the pushback we get sometimes, is that people think, they say, I just like to be spontaneous on stage. Well, most of the time it doesn't work. Maybe you'll hit one night where magic happens and everything's great, and that, some spontaneous thing will happen and be awesome. But the next night it won't work, and they don't know why. So we teach artists to go in with a plan out some moments in your songs, and spontaneity, it will leave room for spontaneity. It doesn't take that out, but going in with a plan allows the artist to stop thinking on stage.
Right.
So that they can be aware of the audience. And all right, so we've got this plan, but now, oops, this happened. Now I can take the risk and be spontaneous and pull that in because I know where to go back to now because I've got the set planned out. It's okay to plan your set because I tell you what, if that moment happened that I was talking about before where it was just something magical happened, I'm guaranteeing you'll try and do that, replicate that the next night because it was so awesome. So if you take time and create these moments in your show, the audience will be engaged. They will, the goal is to allow them to feel things. They want to feel, they want to come to your show and feel, they want to laugh, they want to cry, they want to feel sad at a certain point. They want to get all these emotions out. Maybe even angry. Right. Exactly. So they want to be taken on a journey.
They're not just coming to listen to the CD. They do that at home.
Right. Exactly.
You want to show.
The expectation is so much different. So we are like what you are, Gary, in the studio. You're a record producer. You are probably tuned in to producing a song for radio, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So live, we are producers for the live show because as you know, in radio, they want short intro, get right to the chorus, all these rules for radio that work. But when we step on stage, it's a whole nother animal. And I've seen this so many times. A band will get up there, play the song just like the record, and there's just no life in it. It's just flies by. Whereas we will start with the song arrangement, Gary. We'll go in and say, we'll listen to the songs beforehand before we work with the artist. And we'll listen and say, what kind of things poke out in here? A lot of times there's a really short bridge that's amazing, but it goes by too fast. So a lot of times we'll double, triple, quadruple it, and then break it down at the beginning and build it up and to this awesome thing that, or it could be just a little guitar hook that's really great. So we might take that and throw that on the beginning of the song to get the audience aware of what's happening there.
And what you're talking about is exactly what I do day in, day out, because the arrangement can be so much more important than most people know. And songwriters can be very good at writing a touching song, but they may not always understand the arrangement part of a live performance.
Right.
Because that's another entirely different craft on its own. Then
once we get the moment kind of fleshed out and the right arrangement, well, by moments, let me go back. Let me explain what I mean by moments. There's going to be musical moments. They're all about just a real cool musical thing that's happening. Maybe we extend it and do a guitar trade-off to create a really cool musical moment. We incorporate a fun moment. And a lot of bands hate that because we're not that kind of a band, but I guarantee you the audience wants to have fun.
Exactly.
So we teach them, maybe it's an audience participation, or they're clapping along, singing along. We break it down and leave space to create that audience participation thing. So all kinds of different moments. And then once we get that fleshed out, then we say, what should the song look like? Because 55% of what the audience gets from the stage, communication-wise, is what they see, visual. 30% is the tone or emotion, and 15% is the content.
Right.
So when artists hear that, that's kind of astounding. It's kind of an eye-opener.
Well, just that's basic nonverbal communication, teaching anyway. And, for example, anyone that works in law enforcement with being able to tell if someone's lying or not and telling the truth, that's exactly everything they read too. And they always say exactly what you're saying, that's a lot more reliable than content.
Right. So we deal with, okay, is this a song where everybody sitting on stools because it's very kind of
Yeah.
soft down touching moment.
Oh, yeah.
Is everybody are we running around the stage holding the mic, or is the
Yeah.
mic in the stand? We need to
Yes.
change it up
Yeah.
visually for the audience. Otherwise, after a few songs, they're like checking their watch, and
Right.
it's like all the songs start to sound the same.
Exactly.
But that's the problem with a lot of bands. Like, you know, their songs are all different, but they all look the same, so they start sounding the same.
You know what? Yes, and you just remind me, my very favorite moment ever at any concert ever in the history of my life was Paul McCartney Wings Over America tour, because they were doing Live and Let Die. They had a full brass section, full string section, you know, the full rock band, lasers going off, explosions, you know, smoke, and just, I mean, it was like this huge cacophony of everything. And then bang, the last explosion, and the crowd was on their feet screaming
Wow.
for a good full minute.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just dark, you know, and the focus settling in. And finally, after about a full minute, it finally got fairly quiet. Then all of a sudden, all you could hear was a tap, 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 a foot on the stage tapping.
Yeah.
And McCartney took off with an acoustic guitar doing Blackbird.
Oh,
It went from everything to the most intimate moment. And it was just the most magical moment. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's about staging it to make a moment that people will remember. You know, look at me. I'm still talking about that. That was late 70s, early 80s.
Right, right.
But it was just the most magical thing I've ever seen on stage, ever.
Yeah, and you don't have to have big light productions, and sound, you know, staging. I mean, that's icing on the cake.
Right.
But we take artists, especially indie artists that don't have that stuff. We teach them how to make an engaging show without the bells and whistles.
Good
so
idea.
that it can stand on its own first.
Exactly.
And then, yes, if they do have lights and production, you know, like Tom worked with Taylor Swift on her first 2 big tours, and, you know, he had all the resources to do, you know, really cool drum thing with Taylor and her fiddle player and all kinds of stuff. So the props were, you know,
but like you're saying, it's essentially the exact same thing you're doing. It's more icing.
Right.
On the cake.
Right.
Yeah.
But the visual cues, then it's about natural movement. We have some tools and principles that we use that allow artists to come across naturally. We're not choreographers. A lot of times people mistakenly think we're that. So we'll get that out on the table before the bands are running away. But natural movement, yes. And some people have never crossed the stage before while they're playing a guitar solo.
Yeah.
So it takes some practice. Oddly, you know, if you think about it, when you first sat down with a guitar, didn't feel comfortable at first, right? Because everybody's like, oh, this doesn't feel comfortable or natural. Well, learning your instrument wasn't comfortable.
Learning the guitar is painful.
Yeah.
When you first start.
So you practice this stuff at home in your basement or wherever.
Yeah.
Not when you get on the stage. So by the time you get on stage, then it feels comfortable and natural, and nobody knows that you spent all that time.
Exactly. That's the bottom line, is making it all so natural that it feels like it's total spontaneity to the audience.
Des Dickerson lives in town. I don't know if you know Des, but he was Prince's guitar player.
No, I didn't.
Back with before New Power Generation, I think.
Right.
Like maybe one of his earlier bands. But
he
told us that Prince took off for a week. He canceled rehearsals for a week and took the mic stand and just practiced doing tricks with it. You know, you've seen him flipping around.
I know.
He came back, everybody gets on stage and everybody thinks, oh, wow, he's incredible, but he's worked on it.
Exactly.
We have to rehearse that stuff.
Right.
So, it's totally worth it. I mean, we've seen artist after artist just notice the change in the audience reaction to them.
Oh, and back on this, the spontaneity versus the rehearsing you're talking about is, I wanted to mention that to an artist without a ton of large arena experience, to them it may feel like it's more fun when they're being spontaneous, but I don't believe it is the audience most of the time. You know,
Yeah.
and my whole point when I was on stage was you're serving the audience and entertaining them and giving them a great show. So
yeah.
you know.
And when you come out, what planning and preparation and rehearsal does for people is gives them confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And with confidence comes the authority that you have now when you step on that stage, that you're confident, it's planned, and you can relax, the audience relax, because they see that you're confident.
They see you're owning the real estate.
Yes, you must own the stage.
Yeah.
If not, they're going to be on edge, you know, wondering,
Right.
I'm not sure about this. I'm going to get nervous because they're nervous, or they look like they don't know what they're doing, or, you know, they don't know what song's next or whatever. So it takes away all that stuff so that they can focus, relax, and have a good time watching the artist and being engaged.
All these things you're talking about are also true with comedians and actors too.
Sure.
This is all critical stuff. On the Saturday Night Live reunion show a few weeks ago, I noticed there were a few of the older acts that came back, and you could tell they hadn't been on stage still working their craft, and they literally looked a little uncomfortable, and the audience didn't know how to react. And you know, and then there's others that literally they walk out on the stage and they own the real estate the second, and they always get an immediate response from the audience. It's very much that way. Right.
And how often have you seen an artist kind of fumble around? They talk between every song and blah, blah, they don't know what to say, but we even help them craft how to correctly set up a song so they're not relying on cliche bar banter or just meandering story. You know, let's get right to the story. You don't always have to say, the name of this next song is, or I wrote this next song and the name of it is blah, and then they do it. It's like, it doesn't tell me anything. Set the stage. Tell me where you are where you were when you wrote it. Like, we had a guy come to one of our boot camps and he performed his song and it got a fair reaction. But then we asked him, well, you know, tell us something about this. You know, where were you when you wrote it? And he goes, well, I was sitting on a hillside in England. I had just broken up with my girlfriend, and I was staying at this castle in England. And we're all like, I mean, what material he's got to set up and paint the picture. So that by the time he plays the first note, we're like this on the edge of our seat, waiting to hear what he's going to say.
Yeah, and that's another good point of something I've heard said before, is that when you don't go to a live show as much, maybe because you love their music, as that you love their story, you know, their whole lifestyle, their vibe, you know. You go to a Kenny Chesney, you know, you expect a little, hey, let's kick back. You know, it's like going to Margaritaville, Jimmy Buffett or something, you know, as opposed to, or going to a death metal concert. You go for that story, you go for the vibe, for the, exactly. And if you're not telling the right setups, you're not doing that.
And we also work with artist set lists, you know, how to structure your set so that different moments happen, and so that you're not talking between every song that gets monotonous, and just you know, just the right amount of give and take there. So
I went to a lot of clubbing in Vegas, of course, but there was one DJ that obviously had been a musician, I think, before, because he tried to tell a story in between every song. And, you know, it's one thing when you're live stage performance, it's another when you're DJing and dancing.
Oh, God. He was a
DJ at a dance club.
That's not cool.
And he was trying to tell stories in between the songs.
Just want to dance.
And he's just,
that's
floor kept clearing out and clearing out. You know, so he was in the wrong business. He should have been playing, you know, at state fairs and country music or something.
Exactly.
Oh well. So since I know that you've been doing this your whole life and around this your whole life, do you have any gig from hell stories?
Yeah, I've got a few of those. I remember we had the curtains were pulled, and it was a high school auditorium, but it was it was an evening concert. It was just for the whole area, of course, but we also had just gotten these awesome recorded intros by this radio DJ that was incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please? So that would first, okay, so we had this build-up music, this pad that was like build up, and then at the end of the pad, the voice would come on. So the backlights were on. The music starts and builds and builds. Okay, so the keyboard player and the guitar player and the bass player go out and get on their risers, and the drummer goes out. The drummer and I go out last because I was going to come on when I started singing. And okay, so our keyboard player had borrowed my husband's boots. He said, "Can I borrow those tonight?" Well, they're a little loose on him.
Doesn't sound like a good idea.
So he's got this double keyboard set. Okay, so he goes trotting over to his riser, and he just nicks the end of the riser with the toe of his boot, and he just doesn't have flying plant. The keyboards come down, and the music's building, and Sean and I are backstage, and we're going, don't let that voice go, ladies. We can just hear it, ladies and Sean. So they get the tape stopped just in time, and then the guy, we didn't have roadies at that time.
Right.
So the guitar player and the drummer the music's off. They're just pulling the curtain shut so we can regroup. Somebody out in the crowd, one lone voice, "Yay, fighter!" and once we got up the courage to go out there during the song, the keyboard player's put his gum on the keyboard. Miraculously, I think the keyboards were fine. And my husband jumps over there on his bass, and he points at the gum, and he goes, "What's that?" Mark goes, "My ego."
I've got to share a geek from hell with you, because it just occurred to me, this fits into exactly what you're talking about, and exactly what you do. Is one of the bands I was in, I believe this was in Reno, at a casino, and we had a circular stage. Mm-hmm. In the center of the casino and everything was on a timer.
Yeah.
So at exactly your time, the curtain was going to go up, and the stage was going to start turning, and you were on. We had a guitar player, marvelous jazz fusion guitar player from England, and but he was always late. Mm-hmm. Every gig. We're 1 minute till the curtains go, and then we see him running in the back door of the casino, and he's got his one little amp, his one guitar.
Are you kidding?
Like this. You got 1 minute. Come. And so he jumps up, plugs the amp in, but the amp's outside of the circle that's going to turn. Plugs the guitar. And he
wasn't wireless.
Jumps into the circle. Well, he hadn't been to rehearsal. He didn't know it was a training stage. Jumps out of the circle. So we start playing, and we start turning slowly, and about halfway through the song, I see him going as the cable's pulling tight. He looks over, and he realizes what's happening. So he jumps out of this little circle, grabs the amp without unplugging it, and tries to jump back in the circle. And of course, the electrical cable on the amp goes ding, tong, and he drops the amp, and he falls down. And the old amps, had the wire reverb. So, of course, it goes. Now, this is going through every speaker in the entire casino. The sounds like it's been an explosion. So, literally, the instant that this happens, the bartender we're up on a stage above the bar, and the bartender drops a whole deal of margaritas all over the bar and customers. There's a little old elderly man over here, a slot machine, who pees his pants. And guards are running everywhere with guns drawn, looking for the explosions.
Nice.
Yeah, so,
pretty classic.
If just a little tiny bit of stagecraft, it would happen.
Yeah.
So spontaneity is
Exactly.
not always a good thing.
Yeah, no.
Nice. Well, tell us a fun fact about yourself. Maybe something we don't know.
A fun fact.
Yeah.
Did I okay that question? Oh, let's see.
Anything about
well,
you that
speaking of Prince,
that maybe we don't know? Would enjoy.
I don't know if this would be something that I've done, so not necessarily about me. I stole a pic from Prince's studio.
The best part of that story is that you looked like you didn't know for sure if you wanted to admit up to
I
it.
didn't know.
Wow. Oh, that's priceless.
Well,
that's cool.
I was working with his keyboard player, Morris Hayes.
Yeah.
He did some cuts on my solo record, and we were at Paisley Park and he was showing me around.
Cool.
Went through the studio and the control room. I'm like, oh, there's a pic. It had the symbol on it.
I'm sure he throws them out at concerts.
Well, yeah, probably. But you know, how often you get to one?
Yeah, no, that's
Well, that's not that interesting.
no,
So-
actually, it is. That's actually. I mean, who wouldn't have done that?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like you took a guitar or anything.
Yeah,
so,
no.
Well, getting back on. By the way, I've got your contact info here, and we will also have links up on the web too. Here's your Twitter feed and your Facebook. We'll also put this across the video too. So,
Excellent.
yes. What about? Oh, I read something about you were actually do some help some people get tour support for some artists, and checking out the website livemusiccares.com. And you want to tell us about that?
Sure. This is a way to get more income on the road while you're out doing gigs. There's a number of charities that will pay artists to get kids sponsored. For example, we're connected with Holt International, which is an adoption agency, Child Fund. The group Thompson Square is partnered up with Child Fund. So is Gene Simmons.
Oh, that's cool.
So what happens is when the artist does just a short pitch from the stage, talks about a little bit about the charity. Sometimes they write a song or that has to do with it. Or if there's one of the charities that hits home with them more, there's also AK-47 that gets kids out of trafficking for to fight.
Yeah.
They hand them a machine gun, at however small and sad. So anyway, then the audience is able to, they have the pictures of the kids at their merch table. They pick one up, they sign up, the charity takes it from there, and they will pay the artist for each child sponsored, and it's a pretty decent amount.
That's cool.
So you figure you get, a couple kids sponsored a night, 2-3 kids, $300 extra bucks, put gas in your van or whatever. But the charities feel like this is really a great use of their advertising dollars, because they know these artists can get in front of people that they could never reach with a magazine ad or whatever.
Right.
So that it's that direct contact. And we've got, I think, maybe 7 or 8 charities, but go to livemusiccares.com.
And the artist is Hitchcock during an emotional moment.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of people will tie it into their touching moment in the set. And because people love to give. Yeah. And if it's a heartfelt plea, I mean, it's maybe not appropriate for every kind of gig. Like if you're doing bar gigs or something, maybe not. But we'll help you find the right charity and the right fit for you.
And depending on your reach and genre and all of that, I'm sure.
But yeah, it's pretty amazing. That some people, we know artists that are indie artists that are making a living because of the charity hookup.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's a win-win-win that, everybody wins.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, which is they got so serious after the Gigs from Hell and
Yeah.
stealing the
Yeah.
pick. So that's great because you're not only getting some tour support, but you're doing good.
Yeah.
Too
Right.
in the world.
Right.
So contributing to causes that really make a difference.
Right.
Wow. So do you have a book here?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is Tom's live music method. This is amazing. People are just getting so much out of this. In fact, I just had a producer tell me that one of his acts just read it and they're already applying it and are
Cool.
just so stoked about it.
Excellent.
So that you can learn a lot just with this. I mean, one-on-one training with artists is probably the most immediate way to see changes in your show. But start with Tom's. Tom's got DVDs in this book. We've got amazing blogs on the website and all kinds of resources. So
and you've got two different websites, right? Or is it all on Stage Success?
OnStageSuccess.com is the main one.
Gotcha.
We send some of the pros that are already out there to Tom Jackson Productions.
But most of the books, the DVDs, the signing up for one-on-ones is all through OnStageSuccess.com.
Right.
Okay. We'll get all those links on there.
Yeah.
So terrific. Yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to tell us that we haven't covered about the work that you do with artists?
Well, that's the main. I touched on the main things. Is really tuning an artist into what is it that the audience comes for, and helping them understand that. And we see the difference it makes. So I'll tell a story about a band that I worked with in Minneapolis. They were virtually unknown. They were a Christian rock band, pretty good band. They had some CDs, but nothing on the radio yet. Right. They called me before their summer tour. They got all the festivals booked, all side stages. It was their first, big festival season. And we worked with them for 2 days. I worked on their set. They did a 45-minute set. And I took the lead singer, I took his acoustic guitar off for a lot of the songs because he had this presence almost like Freddie Mercury from Queen. Just like this posture and this vibe about him. Right. And he was very uncomfortable with that.
So he was used to hiding behind the guitar, was that?
Yeah. There were two violin players. It was a violin rock kind of thing. Yeah. So the girl that played violin was very, understated, shy. Her husband played violin too and lead guitar. I had them doing such different things, but they were so willing and open, which was huge. Right. Without that, I couldn't have done much. Yeah. By the end of those 2 days, she was a rock star, man. They were doing these trade-offs, violins. It was just killer. Everything was working. They were just getting it. I loved it. It was so fun. So they kind of sat down all exhausted because you're mentally and physically drained after 2 8-hour days. And she's like, "Oh, we're so different now. What are our friends and our family and fans going to think?" I said, "You know what?" Killer. I said, you have probably this many fans now. You're about to be in front of this many people. Right. I said, "You're going to have to make the decision right now. Are you going to go for it or are you going to stay where you are?" Because we knew a band. We would recognize the big hit song they had that decided to play it safe. And now they've gone from playing in front of thousands to in front of hundreds. So I said, "You're going to have to make a decision right now. It's like either you go for it, go for this with all you've got, or just settle." So I'm praying they don't back down. Right. So a couple months later, I got a text that said, "The festival's going great. Promoters and fans are telling us we're the best live band they've ever seen."
Sweet.
No songs on the radio.
Yeah.
in 2 gigs, they paid for my fee just with their merch sales.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah. So they're one of my shining examples.
What a
that
difference
they
you can
get it.
make.
Yeah. And I got a call from a Canadian artist today, loving the outcome. They came down to the States and this is the first time in front of U.S. audience on the Winter Jam tour, which is one of the biggest tours that goes out now in early first of the year. And they sold out of all their. I worked with them on their set. They sold out of all their merch the very first gig.
Oh,
and people
really?
were going nuts over them. They never heard them before. So the effect that you can have, I mean, it's like, I mean, there's a book called, you should read this. It's called The Show I'll Never Forget. It's a book by different writers, music critics, remembering shows that they've gone to and what they remembered about them.
Right.
It was really interesting. It just kind of backs up everything that we teach. It's like they talked about one guy they saw down on Broadway in Nashville had almost lost his voice. They said it was the most heartfelt performance they'd ever seen, and the guy barely had a voice left. But just the way he performed it and stuff. And they talk about this piano player that she made mistakes, but we didn't care because it was just the performance was so engaging and captured them.
Famous quote by Beethoven was something to the effect of, I can put up with any number of wrong notes, but I cannot put up with a lazy performance. Something to that effect. That's a very bad paraphrase.
That's great.
But his whole point was to be exuberant and engage the audience. And he was. Apparently, he's known once to have been pounding so hard while standing up that he bounced a candelabra off the piano. And, we have this image of him being stayed. Apparently not. Apparently he was like a Jerry Lee Lewis. You know what I mean? And you were talking about the book that had critics talking about memorable moments and things, and it just occurred to me, of all the concerts I've seen, I mean, and I play almost every instrument, and I've been doing this for a long time. Grammy nominations, all this, and I did not mention to you a moment where somebody did superb musicianship at all. The most memorable moment to me all had to do with staging and arrangement. The McCartney performance. So there's a perfect example of what you're talking about. It's what stays in my head because it just was a big emotional moment, magical moment.
I had a experience working with a signed, pretty big name country artist where I was just kind of helping Tom there. It was actually the best, simultaneously the best and worst rehearsal. It was the worst because the artist, every time we suggested something, they had to talk it out and talk themselves out of it. We can't even just try it. It will take way less time than just telling us all the reasons you can't do this. So it was a brutal time. The rest of the band was reading books in between, and Tom goes to the guy. He's one of the players. He goes, "Rehearsal's always this long." No, he goes, "No, this is lightning speed compared to normal." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, let me go home." But it's like, I gotta get one good idea.
Camera's off. You've got to tell me who that was. Okay. I won't breathe a word of it.
So I just came in on this day. Tom had already been working with him. I felt like I didn't really have the respect. I really couldn't get anywhere with the guys in the band, and I don't know. I was just kind of holding back. So they had this lift. Okay, so the guy and the girl go up to this lift, and then it raises up at some point.
Right.
The problem is they couldn't figure out when to raise it. But I knew instinctively, just because I've done this so much.
This is your job.
Yeah,
exactly.
I knew when it would make the hair on your arms raise.
Right.
Before, we tried a couple things. I go, just try it here. Wait till that chorus starts to build. It's like it's building, and then it's like when the band gets built.
Exactly.
And then,
Right.
okay, so they do it. I'm like, I mean, I knew it would work, but it was just like, their manager was there. Tom was
Pulling
there,
teeth, huh?
So they go up. They go up. They had some lighting going. They have quite a bit nice lighting. So they go up. I was like, wait for it. Okay, now. Ba-da-da-da. And it starts to build, and the manager's like, yes! High fives all
That's
around.
great.
I'm like,
That's great.
all right, I'm out. I'll see you later.
That's great.
Oh, but it was just so cool to just see how that works. The visual with the audio. Why does it work?
And see the light go on in their eyes.
Yeah.
Right.
And I knew that would be like a hair-raising moment for everybody. Cool. So, yeah.
Excellent.
So,
okay, fun. Terrific. So,
yeah,
check out their books, their DVDs. If you want to contact Amy about getting some independent work from her too, we've got that link on the website, and we'll also have it down below. And
we might be able to give you. I think I'm going to talk to Tom about maybe a special deal on this book, so you guys can grab that. It's kind of priced like a textbook because it's got so much in it. So it's a $99 book. So we'll check that out. We'll have a link for you on what we can do on that.
Okay. Terrific. Cool.
Oh, also we have a boot camp coming up here in Nashville, the end of the last Friday and Saturday in September. A 2-day event that's fantastic if you can make it to Nashville. But
are there any push-ups involved and chin-ups?
No.
Oh, good.
No physical exercise.
Okay, boot camp, musical boot camp.
Live music method boot camp.
Just don't make that clear. I'm just not big into chin-ups.
Yeah, me either.
Little tiny scrawny arms. Okay, terrific. Thanks, Amy Wolter. So we're signing off, and as you said in your email, rock often and
rock well and often.
Rock well and often. I like that. Too bad I booted it. Okay. Good night from Music City.